All right. Well, welcome to Proverbs Guys Ministries. We're really glad that you guys came to hang out with us today. Just testing our microphones. It sounds like we are kicking at high speed. You guys should be able to hear me quite well. You should hear me a lot better now because I just cranked my microphone up to 10. So tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. We don't always do this, but we have a special episode. We're going to be going over the recent debate between my very good friend Joseph, and he had this debate on the Kentucky Atheist conversation. And I want to just kind of go over some points that Brother Joseph was going to go over that the Kentucky Atheist kind of skirmied off of kind of quickly. And we're going to just slow it down and go over it and really break down the lack of science that the evolution side has. So let me pull this up for you guys. That's not at all what I was trying to pull up. Okay, bear with me. This is the downside of live shows. All right, got it pulled up for you. I'm going to share this with you guys. And let me just say that I think personally Brother Joseph gave an amazing defense. All right, I'm going to share my screen, and you guys can take a look at this with us. All right, here we go.
How are you doing today, Joseph?
Hey, what's going on, bud?
Not
Doing
much.
all right.
I'm going to. I know it doesn't matter because you both have the same picture, but I moved you up there. We have, as a special guest moderator today, we've got Will, and Will's going to be just, kind of making sure we don't overtalk each other, keeping track of time and stuff. I didn't get a chance to talk to you too much earlier, Joseph. I just sent you the info, which apparently you got. Was that okay as far as format, though? Are you okay to go on that?
I'll be honest with you. I thought we were doing the flood and Lucy or transition.
We can talk about the.
So this is the first point, right? The debate was supposed to be primarily on the flood of Noah. And then at the tail end of the debate was supposed to be a little bit of conversation on Lucy and other of these specimens. However, it was kind of a bait and switch, and nothing against the Kentucky Atheist. He's actually a lot more agreeable than many of the atheists that we deal with. He's not as bad as, say, the Godless Engineer. So he keeps it pretty respectful, so we're not dogging him. He seems all right. But it was a little bit of a bait and switch situation. So keep in mind, even Joseph is confused who is the debate opponent because it was supposed to be primarily on the flood of Noah, which is what Joseph came prepared for.
Flood, that works.
No, that's fine. That's just where most of my time went. to get prepared for. I thought that was the main focus. We just kind of threw Lucy in there at the last second. I wasn't really sure, brother. I guess I should have contacted you a little earlier this week. I apologize.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's no big deal. How about this? I assume you want to take the position that a worldwide flood is a historic fact, right?
Yeah, well, actually, yes, yes, I would. Like my position is technically that sites like the Morris Foundation, that these sites are found all over the world. They can only be explained by continent-wide catastrophic flooding, not localized situations. So.
Well, why don't and I'm fine with that because really the stuff that we did talk about transitional fossils, and the stuff that I brought for transitional fossils also kind of explains speciation, so we don't really have to make that a two-part thing. So we can talk about the flood and then how that relates to transitional fossils in the fossil record. I think that those things will tie together nicely still. You okay with that?
Right on. Sounds good.
Okay, so would you like to begin, since you're going to take the position that happened, the affirmative?
Sure.
And you'll get the last word as well for starting.
Okay, let me all right, share my screen here real quick.
Sure.
And like I said, this is probably going to go a little longer than 10 minutes. I'll blaze through it as fast as I can. But if you just want to give me a shout out on time or just shut me up whenever you need to, I'm okay with that also.
Yeah. Will, you want to give him like a minute notice or something at the end here? And
yeah. I'll check in with you, Joseph, when we get close to the 10-minute mark. And if you go over a little bit, this is pretty lax. I'm not gonna crucify you or anything.
Sweet. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, if he goes over, that's fine. I'm not really concerned about that. I would like to let him get his position out as best as possible, So I'll let Will kind of take over control here of the back and forth. And
I will say, okay, right here, the Kentucky Atheist does come out very confident, and he kind of comes out, feeling like he has the research behind him, and you can see that over time, a lot of that confidence starts going to, because Joseph asks a lot of good stumping questions. Brother Achilles, you there, or are you still stepped away?
Hello, no. I'm here, but I just thought...
He's AFK-ish, so he will be back eventually, but Brother Achilles is in the house with us, so good episode. Thank you guys. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, X, Kick, Rumble, and FTGA Media we're trying out today, and soon to be BitChute. Thank you guys. I can't see all of your comments because we're connected to EveMux and we just don't have the capability, and I don't want a bunch of tabs open. So I am sorry. You'll have to catch us on one of the other channels if you want us to see your comments. But we appreciate it. And I post a link in many of the comment sections so that you guys can join the live panel and kind of have a talk with us.
Are you prepared to go, Joseph?
Yes, sir.
All right. Will, go ahead.
All right, Joseph, when you share your screen, I'll start the timer. And then, like we said, I'll just give you a heads up when we're getting close to the 10-minute mark so you can assess on how much you're going to need. And we'll go from there.
All right. Sounds good. It's nice to meet you anyways, by the way, Will.
Of course.
All right. So you just want me to take off?
Yeah.
Yep. And when you do, I'll start the timer.
All right. So, like I said, I just slapped this together real quick last night. It's kind of shotgun anyway, so we'll just blast through it real quick and hopefully get in under the 10-minute mark. But as I said to Joe a minute ago, my main contention is that places like the Morrison Formation can only be explained by catastrophic events, and I think the evidence lays that out very clearly, which we'll go through real quick. The Morrison Formation is famous for its dinosaur fossils. It stretches across a huge area of the western United States, and it leaves evidence that demands alignment with historical accounts of a global flood. I'm going to cover the formation's characteristics, the fossils it goes through, broader geological patterns, arguing that catastrophic worldwide flood provides possibly the only explanatory framework. The facts about the Morrison Formation are recognized by all geologists. These things are not in question. The only question is the amount of time, the amount of water, things like this. The core of this presentation will focus on specific lines of evidence from the Morrison. I'll also address common questions, including the relationship between the Genesis account and other ancient flood narratives, as well as consider potential mechanisms for the flood event itself. The Morrison Formation is a well-defined sequence of sedimentary rocks centered in Wyoming and Colorado, with outcrops in Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, the panhandles of Oklahoma and Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Idaho, with equivalent rocks all the way up in Canada, actually. Its a geographic footprint is immense and amazing, covering a significant portion of the western interior of the United States. Now, the conventional view reconstructs this Morrison Formation as forming over millions of years in diverse, relatively slow-paced environments like rivers, slowly meandering across plains, and floods like from lakes, seasonally, of course. But this interpretation attempts to explain the mix of rock types and fossils found. The ecosystem is pictured as a rich and very dominated by the now famous dinosaurs, these huge apatosauruses and brontosauruses. Keep these interpretations in mind as I go through this evidence, please. And ask yourself, do the features of the Morrison Formation speak of slow, gradual processes operating over vast eons, or do they point towards something far more dramatic, like a single world-altering event like the Genesis flood? My position is that the evidence aligns much more strongly with a catastrophic flood model. Consider the sheer volume of rock in the Morrison. We're talking about thick layers, up to 300 feet thick, spread over hundreds of thousands of cubic square miles. This is like 700,000 square miles, I think. Can slow meandering rivers and small lakes realistically deposit that much material so consistently across such a big range of area, even over millions of years? I don't think so. And the catastrophic erosion and transportation of sediments by global floodwaters provide a much better explanation for the sheer scale of deposition that we observe. The energy required points to an event far beyond typical geological processes. One of the most compelling features of the Morrison is its dinosaur bone beds. Places like the Cleveland Lloyd contain a jumbled remains of hundreds of dinosaurs all packed together. How do these form slowly? Did all these predators decide to die in the same small area over centuries? Again, doubtful. Excuse me. The flood provides a direct explanation. Large populations caught in turbulent, sediment-laden waters, their carcasses transported and dumped together in depositional areas as currents slowed. This explains the concentration, the mix of species found, and the disarticulation of the skeletons. The Morrison isn't a small local feature. It covers this massive area on the map. It's just amazingly big. Again, 700,000 cubic square miles. While there are variations over the character of the formation, it's recognizable across the vast distance as being the same. It holds all the same characteristics. Dinosaurs are all found in death poses. The plants, the marine fossils, it all looks the same across this whole swath. Trying to explain this with isolated rivers and lakes operating independently over millions of years requires an amazing amount of faith in coincidence. A single continent covering, or larger, flood provides a straightforward mechanism for depositing the relatively continuous sheet of sediment with similar characteristics across such a broad region. Then there are the alignment patterns. Large dinosaur fossils found aligned in consistent directions within the fossil beds, large-scale boulder beds, and sediment deposits within or associated with related strata often show directional alignment. I mean, these things are all facing the same way. This indicates deposition by powerful unidirectional waters or currents like tsunami waves. It's very inconsistent with slow meandering river deposition, which creates a more varied orientation. The evidence demonstrates that large objects within these deposits were not randomly oriented. Multi-ton dinosaur carcasses and large boulders seem to have been lined up by powerful water flows like logs in a current. And to evidence that, we can look at another part of Texas where the geologist investigates a canyon that carved in just 3 days. Now, for time's sake, I'm not going to read all this like I had planned to, but the fact of the matter is, in 3 days, it carved a canyon that was 1.5 miles long and more than 23 feet deep. And then He tells you how how it happened right here. But the most important part of this is the highlighted area, where it's important to note that he's explaining in this article that the strength of the rock that is being eroded is not the limiting factor in how quickly erosion can happen. It's more dependent on the amount of water and sediment. Lots of water and sediment, quick erosions. And he did all this because they're trying to study the difference of models in here and in Mars to make quantitative reconstructions on how much water was there, how long it lasted, and how quickly it moved. This is one of few places where models for canyon formation can be tested because we know the flood conditions under which the canyon formed very quickly. More dinosaurs in the death pose. These are the fossils that they're finding all along this Morrison Formation. The exceptional preservation that we see, the bones still connected, fine details intact, soft tissue, things like that, it demands rapid burial. This could not have happened over multiple years, over millions of years. It just doesn't work that way. They would have been carried away and destroyed. Scavengers would have gotten it. So where does this rapid burial mechanism come from in the standard model? I mean, just the best guess they have would be a localized flash flood. While possible, not likely to explain the many fossils across the huge area. It just doesn't work. The global flood provides the perfect mechanism with massive amounts of water, sediment suspended in it, burying countless organisms quickly and efficiently. There's also the marine geology, or the marine fossils, that is in every layer, above the Morrison, below the Morrison, in the Morrison. It's all there. And this happens on throughout the geologic column. Throughout the geologic column, it shows extensive marine inundation. It's there. The water is there. The shellfish are there. The fossils are there. Moving on. Let's see. For time's sake, I know everybody's heard of these, the polystrate fossils. You can see different lines of strata. One tree going up the middle of it. No way that lasted for millions of years. It would have rotted off. So there goes another one. These are the dinosaur bone beds all throughout the area. Again, I'm up on 9 minutes, so we'll just keep moving. This is really just about interpretation of the evidence. It goes all over the place. You know, they go with uniformitarianism. My side would go with catastrophism. The different flood stories all over the place. I think that it speaks more to a shared memory. It strongly suggests that a shared human experience, that all these people were writing about this. And little details may be wrong, but the core elements are always the same. Is a catastrophic flood, divine judgment or intervention, the survival of a remnant of people. These go across the board. They're just small details that get changed. And again, for brevity's sake, you can just throw in the Tower of Babel and the scattering of collected knowledge and languages. And when people come to write these stories, they relied on embellishments or just misunderstandings or just forgot and put what they wanted. I mean, that's why they're all so similar, but they have differences. And when you figure Abraham from Ur of the Chaldees, which was a Sumerian city, only about 30 miles or so from Uruk, it stands to reason that these flood stories likely circulated widely because that was a trade hub. So moving on, this is an article about where the water came from for the flood. It's in this stuff called ringwoodite, and it holds more than, there's 3 times in the mantle of the earth right now than there is water in the oceans. 3 times the water. These sponges suck it up perfectly, and that's where it is. That's where it goes. It goes on to talk about a whole earth water cycle too, which brings in the fountains of the deep, the hydrothermal vents. Yep.
I don't mean to cut you off, but we're just getting close to the 10-minute mark. I just didn't know how far you wanted to go. I just wanted to let you know.
No, yes, sir. I'm almost done. I blasted through. I got one more slide left. I just wanted to.
I just wanted to keep you informed.
I just want to show this about the. My point with this slide right here is that the lunar tide, or the moon, makes the tide happen all around the globe. All around the globe. It doesn't necessarily have to be the whole earth flooded at once. It could be massive water and the moon pulling the high tide around different sections of the earth to where it all floods in the same event, but at separate times. I think that's easily bared out on that. And then again, in conclusion, it seems to me that even the rocks and the fossils are crying out to testify about this world-altering event of the flood. These are all animals that were found there: crocodilians, pterosaurs, brontosaurus, raptosaurus. There's birds, there's plants, ferns. There's just all kinds of stuff there. And there's zero sign of gradual change or evolution. Every one of them's all there, fully formed. There's no way that this Morrison formation happened over millions of years. And I'll shut off right there.
All right. I have to say, Brother Joseph gave a phenomenal opening statement. I didn't want to interrupt it, and I'm going to give the Kentucky atheist the same respect. We're going to hear out his opening argument uninterrupted. Far, and you can see the comments on the atheist side. Very mocking, very unrealistic, and not really an open mind whatsoever. But the facts that Joseph went over just in his opening statement, in my opinion, of course, as a creationist, a young earth creationist, the debate should have been open and closed. Like, it was that good of a presentation. And the Morrison formation is the icing on the cake. This is the big one that they cannot skirt around.
Was a pleasure to talk to last time, and I expect so this time as well. So I appreciate Joseph taking the time to discuss these things with me as well. That being said, I would side with the scientific consensus on the position of a worldwide flood and say that not only do we not see any unique direct evidence of a worldwide flood, but it's one of the things that we actually see lots of evidence across lots of different branches of science that didn't have.
Yo, are you here? What happened? Oh, wait a minute. Is this still live? Wait, what? No. Yes. Okay. Okay. So, Steven had to go because his internet keeps dropping. They have a bad weather over where he is. And let me get that AFK-ish off. But he forgot to press the end broadcast button. Well, that's bad, because now I'll get to comment on the debate, maybe. Let me see where he left it. Let me see that. It's been at least 10 minutes. No. Okay. He's coming back. All right. For 10 minutes, the show was like online. All right. That's funny. That's funny. So, Kentucky, I see you're in the comments. I guess you did a good job. I do wanna commend you on being very respectful to your opponent. So I'll continue what you're saying. If somebody does want to have this kind of a debate, you can contact the Kentucky Atheist, and at least he's respectful. In contrast to others. I know he did have to pull the classic tricks, but it took him quite some time before he had to resort to those, like strawmanning and saying the only reason you're saying that is because you believe in a book, instead of realizing that what Joseph was bringing up was facts. And that's the thing with facts. You can your your mentality changes them according. The fact is a fact. What we understand of the fact comes from how we want to interpret the fact. So when you have a bunch of dinosaurs together, piled up, it makes sense that they happened on a flood. Then the response to that is, yeah, but you can't say that it's a global a global flood. And you're like, okay, maybe, but we get that in other places of the world as well. And in the end, I do think our friend Kentucky Atheist got a little fried, like the good old Kentucky chicken. So from now on, I'll be calling him the Kentucky Fried Atheist. And the reason for that is that actually, that's my personal view, because I think that Joseph gave him a full response on what he did that wasn't respecting the debate. So I don't even have to comment on that. Joseph gave him a very good response. You're doing this and you're doing that, and that's how you're doing it. So at least, yeah, of course, he would say, no, that's not what I did. So then he continued on and did a little more. Because that's the thing, man. Why do you have to? Why do you have to resort to that? Why do you have to say, you believe in the Bible, that's why you don't take the fact for fact, because the consensus says that, which is a fallacy in itself. Hello, my brother.
Hello, Achilles. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Dude, EveMux was like glitching super bad, kept kicking me offline and booting you out. So I ended it, and it told me that it ended, and then I shut my computer off. And then
Whoa.
Krista says, why is your show still live? And Achilles is the only one on there. And then I hear you saying, what? Is this live? So this is the most embarrassing episode we've ever made.
I went to my email, responded, sent you an email, and then I was like, let me close the tab. And I went to YouTube just to see how long it was playing. And I see myself there. And I'm like, wait, what?
That is excellent. Well, I'm glad that we kind of have a chance to restart it. I sent you the link for the YouTube video to the Kentucky Atheist in your
Right.
private chat. I'm having some bad weather. Could you play it on your side?
Yes. Do you remember where you left it?
It was in a private chat to just you and I.
No. Where you left the debate, how many minutes in? I will check it on YouTube.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly how many minutes in it was, but I know we had it started the issues right after Joseph's opening statement. So we want to be fair to the Kentucky Atheist, and we want to let him have his opening statement, and then we can really start breaking it down.
Okay, the link is not here though, but I think I already have it. Give me a second. It should be. I'll find it. I got it right here. So was this the first part or the second part? I think it was the second part, wasn't it?
What do you mean first part or second part? Joseph had just finished his opening statement, and it was about to be the Kentucky Atheist's turn.
Yeah, so there were two debates.
This is part two. I'm sorry.
Okay. So here. Oh, I have rights.
I forgot you have rights again.
Or the marine fossils that is in every layer above the Morrison, below the Morrison, and the Morrison. It's all there, and this happens on throughout the geologic column. Throughout the geologic column it shows extensive marine inundation. It's there. The water is there. The shellfish are there. The fossils are there. Moving on, let's see, for time's sake. I know everybody's heard of these, the polystrate fossils. You can see the different lines of strata, one tree going up the middle of it. No way that lasted for millions of years. It would have rotted off.
Okay, so from what I see from the stream, you played all that, and you were somewhere here.
Yes, it was right after that part. That picture you just showed was the last of his opening statement.
Good. All right, so I'll resume here. Should we be commenting or just, because if people want to watch it, the whole thing, they can go to the Kentucky Atheist channel and watch it there.
Well, we gave Joseph the whole 10 minutes to get his opening statement out. So I do want to be fair to the Kentucky Atheist and give him the same courtesy.
Right.
But as
Right.
soon as that's done, yeah, we can slow it down step by step and just tear it apart.
Yep.
Formation is, we know that there's been a couple of very large mega floods, super floods, whatever word you'd like to use to describe those. We know that there's been some extreme flooding from melting ice dams and such. I would argue, though, that what we don't see in this case is hydrologic sorting of these fossils. We do see fossils in this area, and they weren't picked apart by scavengers or anything, because in order for fossilization to occur, they would have to be rapidly covered, preventing the decay process from happening. So that's why we do find that. And we don't find with an event laying these fossils down again, we don't see either the layers or the fossils in hydrologically sorted. What we do see, however, though, is that these fossils are in the layers that we predict them to be in. We predict that we won't find bird fossils with ancient theropod fossils, and we don't, modern birds. We see throughout the layers, the deeper you go, that these fossils go from less complex body forms to more complex, and change with the environment. As for and I'm kind of doing this like a little bit of a rebuttal, but just because this is, last minute thing here. But we also don't, with one major event causing this, these layers would have all been laid down at once, and the deposition would have to occur through some 300 feet of mud, and you would end up with not well-defined layers, but mixed up layers. And we do see evidence of there being a local flood in that area, but we, in fact, multiple times. And we also know that at one point that part of the world was underwater. And for the time period that we expect it was underwater is where we actually find those marine fossils, which provides a natural explanation for that. And I would take the position that when we have evidence that points to a natural explanation for these things, that there's no need to then go and insert a supernatural one. And furthermore, when you do that, if your evidence points to both of these things being true, then we would say which one is probably true. And the one that is probably true is the one that fits the other scientific branches across time, and that we can make testable predictions about. And that's really the main crux of the problem here with the.
Okay, may I ask you a question, Brother Stephen?
I am open for any question, Achilles.
So why is it okay for the evolution side to say we make some predictions and then we find something that matches the predictions, but it's not fine for us to say that I read about a flood, so I'm expecting to find some evidence of it. And I look around and there they are. Why is it okay for them to predict according to the theory they've built, and it's not okay for us to predict according to the Bible that we read.
Not just that, but to add on to the ridiculousness of your question, the fact of the matter is, there are many more testable and provable predictions on the side of young Earth creation. The scars from the flood have been left all over the world. The legends and stories and seared conscience of the flood is in many different cultures. Like, we have so many testable predictions to prove the Bible accurate, it's ridiculous. But you're right. They will not allow us to use our testable predictions, meanwhile claiming that their testable predictions validate theirs and unvalidate ours. It's just inaccurate.
And as you know, I've been in a weird mood. Part of that mood is I'm done arguing. So whoever happens to be around and watches this, I'm going to lay it out for them. This is only big where you guys are. It's getting taught in schools. It's not getting taught in our schools. And I'm in Greece. I'm not in Afghanistan. I'm not in Uganda. All right, this is Greece. We don't teach evolution to any child or in college or in university levels. Okay, it's not in the books. But in order for them to stick to it in the United States, they have to resort to what exists in the United States. But if you dare look around, you're going to start finding things. For example, do you know why it's called the Grand Canyon, brother?
No, I have to be honest, I do not.
Because it's the biggest one we know of. But what does that imply?
That there are many more, possibly.
Exactly. So here is a canyon that exists in Crete, Greece. So is this, did this get created by another local flood?
Well, and if you look down the sides of the canyon, without doubt, you can see the clear indication of erosion. And they'll say that it was from slow moving rivers. I don't buy that. The Grand Canyon, even, was formed much quicker, and it was formed from the recession of the flood.
So you face this all over the world. And it happens when you have a rushing of waters where they are piled up and then they just, something like a dam breaks, like, you know, a natural dam starts breaking, and it starts and it never ends. Here are the marks that you're talking about. Look at this. I will try opening it up on a new tab and see.
It doesn't take millions of years. It takes billions of gallons of water.
Look how perfectly these are formed. Like, why isn't there some dirt if those were millions of years? And Joseph asked that question. Kentucky Fried Atheist did say that we expect a lot of mud for the fossils to form, but he thinks that it has happened in millions of years. So how can they? And Joseph asked that question. How is it possible? So the only answer that they have for that is that, oh no, in that case, it was a super flood or a mega flood or a, I don't know, find another super word for it.
And that they get into deeper in the conversation, but I know you watched the same debate I did. And it just made me laugh hysterically when I heard him claim that it wasn't a global flood. It was like 10,000 large floods. Like, come on. The evidence is in your face, and you'll go up to any extent to believe this fairy tale.
Exactly. And your job is to try to convince others that creationism is funny, and that's our job, to explain to others that evolution is stupid. I'm not calling you stupid. I'm calling those that are not waking up to the true facts that's just stupid. So here is one of the canyons. Let me check if I'm sharing
And,
this.
and these
Right?
are all larger than the Grand Canyon?
No, that's why it's called the Grand Canyon, right? It's the biggest one we have. But we can't base like a whole theory that spans all over the world and only focus on one. There are other canyons.
We have a celebrity in the House Achilles.
Okay, I'm not there.
It's Joseph. Joseph came to defend himself on this debate.
Hello, Joseph.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Oh, good.
You sounded robotic to me. I probably got some signal issues, but hey, what's going on?
Not
Oh,
much.
good.
We're taking a look at your debate and just kind of breaking it down further and elaborating on some of the points you brought up that were kind of skirted over, and just giving a more thorough, in-depth view of this conversation as it laid out.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I was gonna do that anyways. I was gonna probably do another show where I can just focus on that stuff because, I mean, I had like 18, 20 minutes of an opening and I blasted through it in like 8 or 10, and then I didn't even get to the stuff on Lucy. But yeah, I mean, it was all right. It wasn't a good. I didn't put out a good performance, I don't think, but I did have a couple of moments that
You
I can hold my
didn't
head
you
up over.
didn't you didn't need your best performance, brother. I think you nailed it.
Right,
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
No, this is
With
my
your
total.
hands behind your back.
It's my biased opinion, of course, but I think you won the debate within your opening statement. None of the things that you brought up were thoroughly talked about or explained away.
No, that was kind of the disappointing part. Yeah, I'm not saying he did it on purpose. We just kind of did this shot from the hip. You know what I mean? I don't want to put anything on him that isn't true, but we didn't really like. I gave my opening statement, and then he didn't really give an opening statement. It was more of a rebuttal of mine, and then we moved on to what was supposed to be the rebuttal round. It was kind of awkward and a little off, and but it's cool that you guys are going to take a look into it because that Morrison formation is something absolutely outstanding that they can explain away. And I didn't just invoke God did it or the scriptures or anything. I used secular science to show, and so I
What
appreciate you guys digging into that.
my favorite thing about it was how at the end you exposed the method that he was saying that you're saying all that because you believe in a God. So that's where he said, why are you doing that? Why do you have to strawman me? And that comes after getting the moderator to respond to you instead of the guy you were debating. Like the moderator was trying to fill in the gaps that the Kentucky atheist couldn't fill. So it was like they almost jumped on you, but you defended it, and the moderator stayed back on his spot. Oh, okay, he's back. Did you hear me? Should I say it again?
Yeah, just a little bit. I lost your last part though.
Just the fact that I think you defended that especially well. You pointed it out, and the moderator stayed back on his position, where the Kentucky atheist was free to strawman the whole situation on his own without help from that point on. This is my favorite thing, and that's why for me, you don't win a debate; the other person loses the debate. And I think
Right.
you lose the debate when you start accusing the other side of, the only reason you're bringing all that here is because you believe in some invisible man in the clouds. Why do you have to do that? So
Right.
I think you exposed that so well. But up to you guys. We continue, or Joseph, if you have thoughts, if you want to share, go ahead.
No. I'm all right. You guys can just roll with it. I'm just joining here. I don't want to take over.
Hey, but as we move forward, when we get back into the Morrison formation, any of the slides and stuff you had prepared, feel free to share because I've never even heard of it. That was fascinating.
Yeah, I'd like to. Well, you know where I picked it up, brother, was Dr. Dan Biddle. He's the first one that turned me on to it, and I was absolutely stunned. I couldn't believe it. I was like, "That's right here."
So, Joseph, what I was saying before you got in is that the reason we call the Grand Canyon is
About
because
those
it's
scientists that saw
oh,
they witnessed that carving of a canyon 23 feet deep and a mile and a half long and three.
oh man, you're breaking in and out, brother.
I know, it's so awful. It's so awful. Anyways, go ahead.
Uh, Repeat what you were saying because we got only half of it. Come
Well,
again.
just the article that I was referencing about that channel in Texas that got carved out in 3 days. It was a mile and a half long and 23 feet deep. And these scientists, secular scientists, proved that they carved out in 3 days. They saw it from beginning to end, so they know. And they were actually looking for evidence like this to evidence a world Earth water cycle, not just an American water cycle and a European one, what the water does in Australia, but the whole Earth. And that ties into scriptures, hydrothermal vents, the fountains of the deep. I mean, that's why you can have all this happen in different sections of the Earth, and that also solved some of the heat problem. And yeah, there's just a lot about that I would like to get into.
Yeah, I think the reason you couldn't is because the other side could not defend your opening statement. You might think you didn't do a good job, but it was an overload of information that cannot be refuted. So he tried refuting those, and you went back and forth on the same stuff, and you couldn't move further. But that's good, you know.
I was actually surprised that he rebutted that anything from the opening statement because he didn't have a very clear, precise rebuttal. And I'm surprised he didn't just try to jump right into rebuttaling Lucy, which never got mentioned at all because there were just no comebacks.
Yeah, that's unfortunate too for the Lucy thing because I picked up off of Sea Science right there, and I used a few of his slides from the show me and him did about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and he absolutely destroyed it with the sacrum and the vessel holes, the blood vessel holes, and anyways, we'll get to all that when we get to it. But you go ahead, Heart of Flesh, take it away.
I'm just I was just saying before you got in that the only reason the United States has evolution in your books, I shouldn't say the only reason. I should say the method they're using is to focus only on things that you find in the United States. But we call it the Grand Canyon because it's big, but it's a canyon, and we have others. So we shouldn't be jumping to conclusions from one, and we should look around and see what else is around. That should prove a global flood, right? Because that argument that, oh no, we know that the United States, half of it was underwater. Okay, what about the other parts of the world? So if you look at this formation here, if you go to Wikipedia, it is going to say that this formed through millions, billions of years. And if you don't see how water can do this very fast, in like, I don't know, a day, 2 days of storming out. This is Meteora in Greece. And you can even see how they are rounded off from the water. The rock is rounded off. I brought another one, which is in Crete. I will bring that up again. And these things can only be explained by a humongous flood. It's not just a local flood.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They'll say that all of these canyons were formed by a little bit of water over a long period of time. What they don't tell you is that the opposite could be true, and was. That it doesn't take a long period of time with a little bit of water. It takes a lot of water in a little bit of period of time, which is exactly what we predict with the flood of Noah.
And which reminds me, now that Joseph's here, I don't know, is he still here? Yeah. Okay. That Joseph, why is it okay for the other side to say the reason evolution is true is because we have some predictions, and when we go out, we find evidence for those predictions. But it's not okay for you and me and Stephen to say, I read about a flood, so let me look around and see if I can find evidence for it, to see if it's true. Why is it okay for them to do that and not okay for us to do it? Isn't that a little double standards right there? I don't think he heard
I mean,
me.
of course, we would say yes.
I don't think he heard me. Did he? Is he here?
I am here now, but I didn't hear a word of that, dude. As soon as you said Joseph, I started breaking out.
Oh, man.
But
Don't use his name anymore, Achilles.
that's what it is. The trigger. But yeah, I think you nailed it. I did get him to admit that the cliffs of Dover run from Europe all the way to Australia, and like, how do you explain that? Just like the Morrison Formation, like they're banking on all this happening countless times, untold amount of times, over and over, and it's all looking similar, and it's all laying out the exact same way, and it's giving you the idea that it all happened at one time, but it did really happen at all at one time. And they'll say that to you, but then they'll turn it around and say, well, I think it's a little weird that God would create everything and then turn around and make it look like he didn't create everything, that it all evolved, and he's just deceiving you. I think that's a lot of irony right there. Am I gone again?
No, we heard you.
No, we caught that.
No comment. I mean, you said it all. And what I said, which you didn't hear, is unfortunately, this is going to be like the third time I'm saying this, because I said it to Stephen and then I said it to you and then you didn't hear it. So I'm going to say it again. I'm sorry, viewers. But why is it okay, Brother Joseph, for the evolution side to say we have some predictions to find this there and that there, so we go out and we actually find them where we predict to find them? But that's not okay for you to say, I read about a global flood from the book of a divine God that decided to drown all mankind because it was evil. And it's not okay to say, let me see if there is evidence for it. When you do that, you can't precondition that there is a flood because you believe in a God, you believe in the Bible. But they are doing the exact same method.
Yeah, but you're right, brother. They'll look at you and say, oh, that's post hoc rationalization. You can't do that. You're trying to make your story fit with what we see. But yeah.
Which I think should be a good segue to the Lucy fossil, if you feel like presenting it. Because I do think they were predetermined to find it. And they found something. And they made it fit what they were expecting to find.
Now, I think you had. I wish I would have thought of that, brother, because you absolutely nailed it. I wish that I would have had that to say. And like my immediate argument, again, I was wholly unprepared, but my immediate argument was, if I'm building a house, and I screw up the foundation, I might not know it until I get up to the second or third floor that it's going to be an issue. And so that's kind of how I played it off. It's like, okay, you made a prediction about this and you made a prediction about that, but that could be attributed to population migration because you did find a Tiktaalik right there, but they also found tetrapod footprints way before Tiktaalik, according to their own numbers. So that's no transitional species. So you know what I mean? You just follow the theory of evolution itself didn't help you find that bone. Migration populations did. So it could be true that you can make a prediction about where an animal is going to be, but that doesn't make the theory of evolution true. Does that make sense?
Right. It is. The fact is a fact, and you are preconditioned according to what you believe to see in that fact. But then we have the fabrication part, e.g., Lucy, because that's completely fabricated. So it's okay for somebody to say, what I see when I look at the Grand Canyon is evolution. That's okay. Just don't fake evidence to further support it. You just said, Joseph, that you wish you had thought of this. Well, the case is that I thought of this after you had the battle. Like, what happens in the battle is the battle, and then it creates new thoughts to others that watch the battle. So, right? You know what I'm saying? I think you did a great job.
Well, and
Um,
also keep in mind, Lucy was the first discovery, but it was a very incomplete specimen, and they found parts for her scattered miles and miles and miles apart. That's why they keep going to Littlefoot now. Littlefoot's considered to be like the only actual full specimen that we have. And I also want to keep in mind that even if they found 1,000 full specimens all around the world, that would not prove an early form of human. All that proves is that you found an extinct species that once existed, is similar to a monkey or a person, but it's not.
and you don't know if it gave birth to anything. You don't know.
That's right. You have to make
Right.
sure that you find a pink one and a blue one.
And here's another thing. And here's another thing. Right now, we discover mass graves of humans of the past, and in a sense, or if you go to and dig the cemeteries, we find millions, millions. If there were ancestors that didn't look like us, there shouldn't be just one of them or two.
Well, and
Well,
even then, Achilles, they love to point to the finding that, oh, we have found them in very ritualistic burials, like it's so human. And my response is, well, is it possible that one of these things was a family pet? Because I've had beloved pets, very close loved dogs, and when they died, I gave them a proper Christian burial, and I even put a cross up. So, is that thing human too? My dog?
No, but it's a family member, I believe.
A family member, yes, but human, no. That just proves that a human buried it.
Right. Right. Yeah. And the Lucy also, you're right about that. They did find a bone a mile and a half, 2 miles away, a couple of bones. They've also found that one of the vertebrates was actually a baboon bone, right? That had been tossed in there. So we know that the humans and the baboons were in the same area because their bones are in the same area. And that's a little odd. They don't live together. They don't eat together. Why would two bodies be right there together? That's a little funky. Um, I mean, unless they got hit in the flood together at the same time, which is possible.
Exactly. It's explained by them fleeing from the flood.
Yeah. And then the skull pieces, there's like 6 skull pieces. That's it. And they mashed them on top of a chimpanzee skull. But the whole hip and pelvic area, it looks human, except for the parts that are crushed, probably by fossilization from all the weight of the mud and everything on top of it. But yeah, it's crazy. Lucy is. I mean, when you look at the sacrum, you can definitely tell that's human. It don't even look like a mix between human and chimp when you look at them beside each other. And one of the slides is that it's a human female pelvis, chimpanzee female pelvis, and the Lucy pelvis, and it's absolutely crazy that you can tell that's human all the way. It's a human.
Yep. But they're going to point as this as evidence. And here's the problem. This is not enough transitional fossils, even if we conceded, which we absolutely don't because it's garbage. It's a flawed theory. Even if we conceded that each and every one of these were transitional fossils, not enough. We need many, 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 many more transitions than this to get from that to human. They don't have them. And they aren't finding any more fossils anywhere they dig for the other transitionals that would be missing. They only keep finding these same monkeys. I find that suspicious.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point too. And like he was trying to give me a bunch of stuff about the horses. How they all have totally different skeletal features.
mhm.
Right, but
Yep.
that out of the other side of his mouth, he's given me comparative anatomy as evidence because they all have the same skeletal features. So it
Mhm.
doesn't really make much sense that he's proven evolution because all these things have the same skeletal structure. But then he's saying that uh, this horse is also evidence of evolution because it has different skeletal structure.
And
It's really, really.
Dr. Hovind says it all the time, but it's so true. All this proves is a common designer. It doesn't prove common ancestry. It proves that God found a working design and he said, hey, I'm going to reuse that sucker because it is a working design. It was brilliant.
Right. Yeah. I do the exact same thing on PowerPoint, right? Like when I create a slide, before I put any writing on it, I'll duplicate it 2 or 3 times. That way I have that same style going through it. You know what I mean? So it's the same. I'm using the same design, even though the slides say something different and they mean something different. I'm using the same design.
The only thing I have to add is that I don't have the patience anymore to go back and forth with evolutionists. I just want people to wake up and start thinking for themselves and see that every argument is either falsified or out of context, or they're not telling you something. And I want the viewers to wonder why. Why all this lie? And the answer is very simple. They're trying to tell you that you're an animal, so whatever you do is fine. It's okay. Like survival of the fittest. If I meet Joseph, I can steal his wife if I am better fit, and I'll tell him, hey, survival of the fittest, Joseph. You know, monkeys did it, dogs do it. And that's not in case there is a creator. He's clearly telling you that he doesn't like that. Uh,
Hello, Robin.
Hello. I wasn't looking at the comments. So let
Do
me close
you?
on my
Yeah, I was
tabs.
going to say, do you want to play some more of the debate? Because it's getting into a really interesting point, and I love the back and forth part. There's a lot to stop and go over.
All right, let me get rid of this. There we go. Joseph, tell me if you have any thoughts, I'll pose it.
Yes, sir.
The flood narrative is that the things we would expect to see in a worldwide flood that laid all these things down in a catastrophic event, we don't see. What we do see
Pause.
is things that
Lie.
I like the Kentucky atheist. He was a respectful dude, but
Yeah.
that is just simply not accurate.
Yeah.
We find overwhelming evidence that supports the predictions of a global flood. They're all around the world.
And the only way to disprove it is to say, oh no, there were a lot of little ones. So, you know, it's not very, we're not far apart. You're saying there's a lot of little floods, super floods though, a lot of super little floods, and we're just saying they were connected. That's all.
Yes,
They
sir.
were they were one. That's all.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I tried to relay to him. I was like, you believe that this happened countless times to make this formation. I believe it happened once, you know, multiple tides probably coming in and out to make the layers, but the whole event only happened once. I think that's more rational than believing countless ones did it from the top of the country to the bottom of the country, and it just so happened to all look the same. All these same animals are in the same layers over multiple years and millions of years and over different floods. It just doesn't stand to reason. That argument doesn't make sense at all.
No, and like you said, the Morrison formation is a perfect example of what we would expect to find in a global event. All of these animals that were predator and prey to one another in the same location, headed the same direction. Obviously, they were escaping a catastrophic event that was global. This is predicted in Noah's flood.
Or their bodies were stormed out and dumped on the same spot by the water. That's why we find them all together. It was like a lake full of bodies, and when that dam, whatever it was holding it back, broke, as it stormed out, there were some spots where they started piling, and then another spot that the other part started piling up. And the map that you showed, Joseph, that is 1/4 of the United States. I mean, okay, that's more than super flood. Like, that's a big one. And if you have the same thing happening in China, if you have the same thing happening in Europe, if you have the same thing happening in Africa, then maybe they were all connected. You know?
Well, and
Yeah,
and also, go ahead, Joseph.
Are you talking, Steven? I'm sorry, I'm breaking up a little bit. Are you getting in there?
No, go ahead, brother.
Joseph. No.
Yeah, I'm right
Joseph.
here. I'm here.
Okay, go ahead. Share your thought.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that he did say that to me one time, that, this Morrison formation in America doesn't prove a global event. And I agreed, no, this one alone doesn't. But like you just said, Akili, this happens all over the world. And I pointed that out. And that's when I got to the cliffs of Dover going all the way to Australia. And he was just kind of like, oh yeah, that's something different, as if that's an exception to the rule or something. So that's not even worth talking about. Everybody knows that one's huge. But it's like, why do you think it's so big? Do you know what I mean? Why do you think this chalk line is so big that it stretches continents like that? It's amazing.
And what I loved also, Joseph, is how he tried to downplay the length of it. It goes from Canada all the way into South America. So this is not a smaller event that just covered half of the United States. It is almost a continental event, but they skirmied over that because they couldn't address it.
He corrected me. I said it was a continent-wide event, and then he corrected me. He was like, well, the whole continent is North America. You're just in the United States. I was like, okay, yeah, semantics. That's correct. But it does hit Canada and touch South America. So that counts, I think.
Okay, wait a minute, because I think you were right. The continent is all of it, like from Canada to Chile, all of it. That's the continent. So if it went from Canada to, let's say, Mexico, well, it is a continental event.
Yeah, technically yes, but like, to be fair, I don't know how many miles into Canada it goes, but when you look at it on the map, it's barely in Canada. So I didn't want to commit hyperbole. I didn't want to exaggerate and have that thrown at me. So
Yeah, exactly. You got to be careful,
Yeah, sir, you do.
They'll jump on anything. That's because they don't have an actual case, so they will jump on anything. I also loved the animation that you brought up with the moon, how it pulls the water. I loved seeing that. And for those that haven't watched it, the case is that if you have a planet filled up with water, as Joseph dropped, as the moon passes over. I think you played it here, so I'm not sure.
He did. He played in his opening statement and showed how the majority of the water would have been in like almost a bubble following the rotation of the moon, which is what we see in science today. So that's a prediction that was already predicted and then validated through the global flood event.
And that's what would explain the sediments. Because the water goes, it leaves things behind, and then it comes back, and it leaves another layer, and then it comes back, and it leaves another layer. And that is the reason why you see all these layers stacked up, one on top of the other. Because if the other case was true, if they were, I'm looking for that picture with the sediments that we had before right here. Okay, I'm opening it up. If the other case was true and all those sentiment layers were put up after millions and millions of years, there should be dirt in between. They shouldn't be as clear cut as we see them. So,
Right, which absolutely would point to the receding shoreline in the repeated process. That's what we would expect and predict to see, correct?
right. I'm trying to open this image on a new window, so we get a bigger picture of it. Opening new tab. There we go. Share this tab instead. So that's a crazy place to swim. Would you swim here, Stephen?
I would not. It looks prehistoric.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Catch a prehistoric germ out of there, buddy.
Definitely. I think it's what killed whatever is in there. I see something. So you see all these layers, how they are like sharp, one from the next. If it took millions of years, they shouldn't be that way, guys. Look to the left side. Look how clear cut they are. So the
Yeah,
flood.
that's
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to agree with you. That right there is what they call a knife edge layer mark, and that means like very minimal or very fast moving erosion. So like their claim has to be either that thin layer of erosion is all that eroded over millions of years, or most of it got swept out by fast moving water, such as tsunami tides and things like that. So like there's only a couple of reasons to have that kind of edge on a layer. Do you know what I mean?
And this one is not on your side of the world, guys. It's on the other side of the world. And there are millions. Like it's everywhere. No, it's not even millions. It's everywhere. Wherever you dig, this is what you're going to find. Look at the right side, the red one on the right side, top, bottom right. Look how sharp that is,
It looks like a layer of bricks, doesn't it?
right?
It's as smooth as glass. And again, this is something you would not predict over billions of years with small moving waters. This is something you would predict with quick erosion from billions of gallons of rushing water.
Correct.
And if you bring this up, they will say, okay, no, okay. This case was a flood. Oh, come on. But it was just, a smaller flood.
Well, another assumption that they make all the time is, well, we don't see all parts of the world suffering from the signs of a flood. Okay, but what they are not taking into consideration is that the world post flood immediately thereafter would have been so vastly different than what we see today. And they can't even go back and accurately predict what the world and globe would have looked like 3,000 years ago, much less billions of years ago. That's just a ridiculous claim, and no one was alive to see it.
I don't think anybody quite contemplates and understands how long a billion is, right? Like if you was to count every second, 1, 2, 3, it would take you like what, 11 days to get to a million, like 30 years to get to a billion or something, like, like I can't remember the numbers, but it's that far off. And it is just an amazing amount of time. And I don't think they're really thinking about.
And that's, I think he dropped. I can't hear him. Joseph, you hear?
That's a shame. He was going to drop the mic.
He did. Oh, yeah,
Huh?
here's it. You're going to have to repeat what you said at the end, brother. Are you still with us?
No, he temporarily dropped out, and he's back. That's a hero.
Welcome back.
Oh, this is frustrating, brother. Maybe God wants me to shut up.
No, that's all right. And we also have Kentucky Atheist out in the comments section. I'm not quite sure which point he's pointing to, but he did say, is this Joe? Hello, is this Kentucky Atheist?
Yeah, hey.
Hey,
How's
Joe,
it
what's
going,
going on,
man?
bud?
Not much. How you doing, guys?
Hey, not bad. We're
Good.
going over the debate you guys had the other night, which, by the way, was really good.
Yeah. Joseph was a great interlocutor, and I like having people where we can actually get through a conversation.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I have dealt with a lot of trolls. I'm sure you have too from the creationist side, but I do have a lot of respect for you for how civil you kept the conversation, and I even pointed that out at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, no, I dropped in earlier, and you guys had some technical problems or something, and I left and came back.
Yeah, and when I came back to my computer and realized that the stream was still on, I just started talking and we kind of resumed. Stephen was contacted and he came back. He thought he ended the show, but it didn't end. So if you go back to that part, you will see that I'm saying too how respectful you were, and people, if they want to have this kind of a debate, they should contact you. I followed up on your comment and repeated it, because
Yeah.
we have different views, but as long as we can be respectful, we can have a discussion.
Yeah, no, I think that no matter which side of this you're on, people can benefit from us talking about it.
Right. So, Joe, Mike's yours. We've been going on for like, I don't know, maybe half an hour, more than that. So, if got any comments?
Well, so you were talking about the layers being defined as not what you would expect to see, but that would be like if these layers aren't like, oh, it was just millions of years in between. We say this is, we wouldn't know when one started and the next began. The layers that we see are the result of sediments that have hardened over time, and then the layer lays down on top of that. So you would expect to see a very defined edge in between those layers.
So, what formed these?
Sediment.
Which came out of where?
From
water.
Yeah, from different periods of land being underwater.
Okay, so this picture that we are seeing is from a canyon in Greece, in Crete in particular, which is like this.
Yeah.
So there is a river at the bottom, and although it's not a Grand Canyon, it's still a canyon, and there are a lot of them all over Greece and all over Europe.
Yeah.
And other places of the world. The reason it's called the Grand Canyon is because we have nothing as big as the Grand Canyon all over the world, right?
Right.
So water formed this, right? And water formed the Grand Canyon as well. But did it form from that river at the bottom? Or is the river at the bottom the remnant of what formed this?
Well, I'm not familiar with the geography and the shape of this canyon, but as for like the Grand Canyon, the way that the river, the Colorado, goes through the Grand Canyon and meanders back and forth, isn't consistent with rushing water cutting it out all at once. You wouldn't have the sharp turns and things that you see if it was all laid out in one catastrophic event.
Okay, so
No, hold on. What was that part? You wouldn't have what if it was
The meandering river that goes back and forth through the canyon.
Wait, I don't.
That's about speed, though. That's about speed. The faster the water moves, the straighter it moves. The meandering comes from slow brooks and creeks and small rivers.
Well,
Not just that, but it's proven that water will always find the path of least resistance. Why would we not just concede that this was the path of least
because it's cut out of rock. It's not, you have matching layers of rock on both sides. It's solid rock was cut out. It wasn't a path of least resistance. It went through rock.
But if this was a place of an original spot for, say, a thermal vent, or one of the locations where the fountains of the deep burst open, there's multiple explanations for how it could have started.
Those are explanations. They're just not supported by anything, whereas the other is.
I would write this in the comment. I don't want us to, so you just gave me a bit of a time so I can say it here instead of typing it. I don't want us to be all like 3 against 1. So I'll
absolutely none.
I'll push back. You guys talk, and if you want me to bring up any pictures, you let me know. I'll bring them up. All right.
Well, it's just an open panel discussion, just a friendly talk, and
Yeah.
he's able to tap in any supporting help he would like to come and join the conversation too.
I'm fine with it. I don't see this as a me versus you thing. We're just discussing the mechanisms that result in what we see today. I don't have a problem with any of that.
Right.
And I'm completely open to being wrong about things. You know, if I'm wrong about something, tell me I'm wrong, and we'll look at it, I'll look it up and
All right, but
figure that
I
out.
I don't understand something, brother, on the statement you just made here.
Yeah.
So the canyon that I have in front of me, which you don't know its geography, you don't know how it formed. I think that all canyons form the same way, rushing water. And in your worldview, it has been a smaller flood, a local flood, that created another canyon, not the same that created the Grand Canyon. So I'll take that for now, and I'll say this one was created by another flood, a smaller flood.
Well,
It was not created by the river at the bottom. And the question I have is, why shouldn't the rocks on the right side be the same with the rocks on the left side? Why would I expect them to be different?
you wouldn't. What I'm saying is that if we're talking about the formation of the canyon, not just like, oh, there was some dirt in it and we washed it out from between these rocks, but if we're talking about the formation of the canyon, you would expect to see it be the same on both sides, just the same. And also, I'm not claiming that the Grand Canyon was caused by a flood. I'm saying there's a river that's been going through that same area for millions of years.
Okay,
But the river's underneath the top of the canyon. How do you explain that?
which I would bring up
Erosion.
the next picture, which is exactly the same case with this canyon over here. If this river formed this canyon, it had to climb all the way up to that top to start eating the dirt away, because it would go around it. It wouldn't find a hole and go through the mountain and then slowly start eating it.
No, you're right, but also that mountain didn't. Something interesting about that particular picture is I notice how there's this sharp edge on both sides, and the top is really flat. So I'm not sure about this specific one, but it's the whenever we have uprising, which is what results in mountains, that takes lots and lots of time. It's not well, mainstream science doesn't claim that it's a quick process.
No.
And so as the mountain is raising up, you also have a river running through it, cutting into it. That's why we see such a difference in the gap at the top of the mountain and the bottom of the mountain, right?
Okay,
Right.
so what you're saying is like the river didn't start off underneath the top of the ridge. The mountain kept growing beyond the river.
That my guess is both things were happening at the same time in this case. I'm not certain, but
No, I
But
understand that. And Joe, not to beat to death what Achilles and Stephen were already saying, but I appreciate your civility too, man. And I would like for us to be able to do this and talk about these things we find in science from your perspective and from our perspective. And that would be not refreshing for a change instead of just lashing out and hating each other for what they think or believe.
Yeah, and admittedly, I'm not. Geology is not my strong area. I've debated the flood before and stuff, so I had a little bit of leftover research and things that I remember from it. But I'm as far as science goes, I'm more of a physics guy. But I think that there's still some of that involved in geology. So I may not always be correct on the things that I say about it. Now, I will give you a reference to something else if I'm citing some other thing.
yeah,
Right on. Sorry, Hart. Real quick, I want to jump in or talk to the chat and say, hey, C Science, it's good to see you. I had totally planned to use all your slides from the Lucy thing, but we didn't get to it. And I would also like to ask Robin if she's okay. She's in a chat on YouTube, so I'm sure she's fine. But she said she ran her truck into a ditch. I hope she's all right.
She did do that. It took a couple big rigs to pull her out, but I do believe she said she was fine. Yesterday she was back home, so a scare, but thank God she was all right.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, she sent me pictures of it.
I love Robin. That was terrible. I'm glad she was okay.
Yeah, Robin's my pal.
Come in here, Robin. Tell us what happened.
So, do you guys want to play a couple more minutes of the debate? And Joe, just like all of us, feel free to stop at any point to elaborate more on something you said or whatever.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, real quick before you start, I got to step away for a couple minutes. I'll be right back, guys.
All right, brother.
Are consistent with these being multiple layers laid down over long periods of time. And we don't just see these layers in this Morrison formation. These layers are around the world, and they look different depending on different things, geomorphology and all that. But we do find these layers, and we never find fossils from one layer in other layers where they shouldn't be, or where we wouldn't expect them to be anyway. Also, with these fossils that we find, the multiple forms of dating that we have also coincide with the with this being an event, with this being multiple events taking place over a long period of time. So,
Oh, I'm sorry. I actually was thinking of pausing, and I had my hand on the mouse, but I misclicked. But I'll take it. I have a question, Joe.
yeah,
I asked I asked before you got here, but now that you're here, I can ask you.
sure.
Why is it okay for the evolution side to say we have these predictions and we go out and we actually find stuff that match those predictions? But if I dare say that I read in my Bible that there was a global flood, and I read it in every other book of prehistory, which we can call mythology in other stuff, it exists everywhere, a global flood. And I go out, I am not supposed to find stuff that match it, because if I do, I'm being accused of, I believe in the man in the clouds, and that's why I see these things. Why is it okay for one side to predict what they will find and then find it, and it's not okay for me to predict what I'll find and then find it?
No, it would be perfectly fine for you to say, well, if it's the case that this worldwide flood occurred, then we should expect to see this in this place or everywhere or whatever. That's perfectly fine. The thing that I have take issue with is whenever you read about that flood and say, I accept this as truth, and then you go and say, see, this thing that supports an old Earth actually supports my point of view because I believe that a flood happened. That's the difference. I don't take issue with making predictions and confirming them. Go for it. I wish creationists had more of those.
Well, the prediction is that I would be finding canyons all over the world. I would be finding dinosaur fossils all piled up together because of the strength of the water that was pushing their bodies. I would expect to find trees through the layers. I would expect to find all these things, and they're there.
Yeah.
Also, if I could, you did make the statement that we find the fossils exactly where we would expect, and we never ever find them where we don't expect to find them. But I don't know if you were aware that's just not always accurate. Here's just one example on the screen of where we have found fossils with dinosaurs. And as Joseph mentioned in your debate, which we'll get into as we go along, the Morrison Formation shows a variety of specimens that were not supposed to coexist.
Well, I actually, when I say that we don't find them where we in places we don't expect, what I'm saying is overall that there's exceptions. There's places where radiometric dating there's anomalies in it, but we don't look to the one or two anomalies to explain the norm.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
but that. Go ahead, Achilles.
my question is, shouldn't the anomalies represent cracks in the theory?
Well, I don't know of any theory. Well, I don't want to say theory. I don't know of any of these claims that anyone says this holds truth 100% of the time, all the time, because there can be other contributing factors.
Well, gravity.
Well,
I mean,
gravity
if
isn't.
there was, if there was an exception, we would reconsider the theory, but we don't see an exception to most of the the laws of physics. We don't see exceptions.
Well, laws are not the same as theories.
Okay, so it is a theory.
Well, no, no, I'm just using the words that you used.
Right. So it goes hypothesis, theory, and then law. Correct.
Okay, so the difference in a theory and a law is a theory uses has some sort of mechanism and uses laws to support
Well,
that this thing is possible.
a theory
Right.
is something that has presented testable predictions. That's a scientific theory. A law is something that we have established as a fact. We have more than enough predictions that have been come true and discovered. So that's the difference between the theory and the law. But that doesn't mean accuracy.
Well, that's not what a theory is either, but not in scientific terms anyway. It's not just testable; it's confirmed multiple times.
Well,
That's why I didn't want to use the word theory a moment ago whenever I said that.
But if it was proven so much so, it wouldn't be a theory anymore. It would be a scientific law, which they have not been able to form yet.
So here's why it can't. Here's why things are a theory and the difference between the colloquial definition and the scientific definition of theory. So theories are things that have held true every time that they've been observed. Whenever we talk about the theory of evolution, there's the fact of evolution and the theory of evolution. We have observed evolution in any number of cases and the mechanisms that cause it to be a fact. But whenever we talk about the theory of evolution, that applies to the things that we haven't seen, but we're saying that this set of facts that we observed should hold true within these other things because there you go, perfect. A scientific theory is well substantiated explanation, which means that it's been observed.
so if you don't, um, if you don't, if you falsify the observation, then I understand what you're saying. But if you see something where others see something else, then that's your theory versus their theory.
Well, it's not inferred. You say
What?
see something else. It's not I see something and just guess that this is the cause. That would be the colloquial use of theory. Theories are things that are actually observed objectively. It's not I see this thing, so I say it's this, and you see it, so you say it's this. It's not that
Okay.
sort of thing.
No, yeah. But what matters is that we need to, for it to step out of the theory realm and become a fact, then we need to have our prediction should be able to be verified by the observations and tested
Right.
and repeat it over and over again. So if you have some things that are failing the observation and the experimentation, then that should be at least a warning sign that there might be some flaw with that theory. But we don't see that happening with the theory of evolution. We see things stretched to fit, and we put it in science books. And
Well,
again,
no.
not all the books.
No.
Your books, only in the States.
So just like on screen here, a theory, the theory of evolution is used to make predictions. They observe the outcome of those predictions, and when they're confirmed, it supports that theory is true. Because you're asking the question, if our theory of evolution is correct, which we have observed and substantiated, then we should be able to make this prediction and observe it. And when you observe those predictions and you confirm your theory again and again, it becomes a more well substantiated. It never goes above the level of theory, though. A theory never becomes a law. A theory is the highest gold standard you can have in science.
Okay, I could go on and say, why then can't I go and say, my theory, let's say, is there was a global flood. I predict this, and I go out and I find the observations. So that also remains a theory.
So,
And I'll just let it, because, okay, what you did was to define the term here. All right.
so when,
Go ahead.
like, let's say, for example, what you just said, my theory, my prediction or my hypothesis is that there was a worldwide flood, and I want to go make observations, and I expect to see this if my hypothesis is correct. So
Uh-huh.
then the thing that you need your observations to do is to not point to other outcomes, and not just each observation, but the whole body of observations that you're making about this hypothesis, right?
And that's what brings us back to what I asked 2 minutes ago, where we got into this, which is, if there are exceptions to the rule of where, let's say, we predict to find the sentiments, we predict where to find the
Yeah.
fossils, and we don't find them where we expect, but we find, why do we hide those under the rug instead of re-examining the theory, and we take that theorem and we put it in scientific books as it is fact, when there are so many places where the observation doesn't match it? Because it's not getting taught in your schools as a theorem. It's being taught as theory, as fact,
Well,
right?
so again, there's the theory of evolution and the fact that evolution occurs are two different things. And evolution does in fact occur, and it's been observed over and over and over.
That's
And
not
not,
that's not
and
true.
in real time too, not just like, oh, we think millions of years this and that. They've observed even single cell organisms evolving into multicellular organisms in the
No, that is
span of
not
less than
true.
a year.
That is not true, man.
It is
You know,
absolutely true. I can give
no,
you
it's not.
multiple examples.
Uh, I can bring up a biology chemist, and he can give you the answer. No,
I
we don't.
think I think that could be helpful, Achilles,
Hello?
because we're just laymen and he's the authority. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you,
Hello?
thank you, thank you.
Let me see if I can find it. I'll need a minute. Go ahead, guys.
My name is Achilles. I am an expert in everything Greek.
Um, that's yeah. Okay, you could leave him on, but that made us sure that that's the Josh that we know. Because I was wondering.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anyone who wants to come on and have a respectful conversation can, but there's no need for that.
You can't take that guy seriously, man. And I've tried. I've tried.
But Joe, while he's pulling up the video, you're more than welcome to keep defending your position.
So there's been two examples that are well known, that are easy to find, are with yeast and algae. And in the case of the yeast, in a matter of 50 weeks, I think it was, they seen it evolving into a multicellular organism from beginning as a single cell. And it used like tubules, is I think the word that they use. And the difference between this being just a colony of single cells and one single multicellular organism is that the livelihood of one individual cell is risky to the cells around it, because an attack on this caused death in the whole organism, not just a single cell.
Okay. I think I have the drive disconnected because I can't find it in my hard drives. I have right in front of me 3 terabyte of separated drives. I can't find it in any of them. I think I have it on the 2 terabyte drive of my previous computer because I recently upgraded. Even though that synthetic chemist is talking about exactly that, that no, it's so complicated. The single cell organism is already so complicated, and it doesn't evolve into a multi-celled organism. And he said, I'm the synthetic chemist. Go ahead and ask me, and let biologists say whatever they want to say, because I'm the one building their kits. All biologists know about abiogenesis is they make a kit, they use a kit that I made. And he's saying some numbers of how many lipids exist on the membrane, on the outside of the membrane, on the inside of the membrane, on how they have to match. And, you know, we can make it sound like, oh, yeah, it's doable with a lot of imagination, but it's not. We have no idea how it all started, how abiogenesis started. And the theory of evolution is telling us that, oh, yeah, it was just a single cell organism. It became a multi-cell organism. And it makes that huge leap, which is impossible to do.
Well,
And
you're
then
talking
it does,
about two different things.
and then it makes another leap. And then, well, you said that we observe evolution all over, and we've seen single-celled organisms become multi-cell organisms. And I'm telling you
Multiple
that's not
times,
possible. Multiple what?
repeated over and over.
Repeated. What is repeated over and over?
These tests on yeast and algae have been replicated many times.
Where
It's
what
not
happens?
where the yeast evolves into a multicellular organism.
From a single-cell organism.
Yes.
Okay, according to synthetic chemistry, that's impossible. It can't
According
happen.
to one person that you're bringing up who disagrees with the scientific consensus.
With 3 PhDs.
He did. I'm just saying that there's a scientific consensus about this thing where almost all people in this field who work on these things agree. So I, I I don't I'm not saying that this person is wrong or anything. I don't know,
Okay,
but I accept the scientific consensus because their work has been repeated over and over with the same methodology, and it has the same outcome over and over. So I accept that. Yeah.
okay. When some people got together and wrote a book trying to prove Einstein being wrong, Einstein said, even if it was one that proved me wrong, I would take it. It didn't need to be many.
Sure. Like I said, I'm not saying that your guy's wrong. I'm just saying I accept what the scientific consensus is. And if somebody wants to propose that it's wrong, they need to put that out for peer review so that we can assess it. The right now though, where it stands is that they observed this. It's not a theory or anything else. Not that there's a problem with a theory. Just the wording you used a moment ago, but the when the scientific consensus stands and they've repeated this over and over, then yeah, if you want to say that it's wrong, then show where it's wrong, submit it for peer review so that we can put it through the same process that we did the original hypothesis, and we can refine what we know and don't know better.
Okay.
He may have great things to contribute to this,
He
but
may have.
yeah,
He
if
may
it,
have done what you're calling him to do already, and
huh?
that's why he is attacking the consensus. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but there is a little bit of a bias concerning
Come on
what
now.
gets uh, accepted in that consensus and what is not. I don't know if you've noticed it. By the way,
There isn't that's
I'm
not a
sorry.
thing. That's not even a thing. What gets accepted is it's not what gets accepted as consensus. If you go and you publish in a journal that I did this experiment and came out with this, and they publish it, it's not, oh, we accept this as the consensus. People try to prove that wrong. That's what science does. It attempts to prove it wrong, and when it can't, and it comes out with the same explanation, then it slowly becomes a consensus. It's not a we have the consensus on this.
Yeah, that's the theory.
Well, I mean, you're proposing like some kind of underhanded conspiracy going on, and you, if you
100%.
then show it.
We've made previous shows where I've shown all the books of biology in Greek schools, and the word evolution doesn't exist. The theory of the tree is not in our books. So this country is not like some far distant country in the deep forests of I don't know what place. This is Greece. And we don't teach it to any class. So
Okay.
that should be a little alarming.
I mean, how so?
Um, if
My
it was
school taught intelligent
it
design.
was
I mean,
if it was a fact, it would be getting taught in Greek biology schools, but when in Greek classes. But when you get into your first biology class, the professor says, "Hello, children. This is the cell." And you will get an examination on all those little parts that exist inside a cell and what
sure.
they do. That is our first class.
Yeah.
And on the second grade and on the third grade, it goes even deeper, and it never mentions where the cell came from.
Oh,
So there is
sure.
a difference between the science part of biology, because biology means everything about bio.
Well, what you're talking about isn't biology, though. Where the cell comes from is chemistry.
I didn't say comes from. You see what I'm saying? I didn't say where it comes
Those
from. That
those are the
that and
words
it's
you
not
used.
even chemistry. Of course, chemistry is needed for the cell to function. But where it comes from, your side that says it comes from a previous uh, single cell organism, and my side that says God made it that way, they're completely equal, and they shouldn't be in biology books.
No, they don't. They are not equal. And
They are, because it's a theory.
no,
Well,
hold on,
yeah,
hold on.
Achilles, let's let Joe have time to like get out
Yeah,
his full thought.
yeah.
Because you may agree with me here. The only reason that I'm saying they're not equal is because of the process, right? Because these things that are put forward in textbooks of schools for science are subjected to a process. The claims of religion can for sure be subjected to that same process, but we're going to accept the outcomes of both of these equally, if that's the pedestal you want to put it on.
And that's why, because I agree with you, that is precisely the reason why we don't have that in our biology class.
Sure, and my school was the same way. My school didn't teach evolution at all. They taught intelligent design.
Ours didn't even teach intelligent design.
I have
That's
I
what
have
I'm
a
You see the
saying.
question though.
difference? You see the difference, though?
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And okay, and it's in good spirit. I don't understand, because when we're having these conversations, anything archaeology for your side digs up, they say this is evidence to prove a prediction. But on our side, we have dug up the city of David, which was only predicted in the scriptures. We have found the location resting place of Noah's Ark. We have the sulfur balls of Sodom and Gomorrah. I've held them in my hand. Why are those not also
People,
archaeological discoveries that we can point to and say this proves the predictions of the Bible?
So would you like to talk about the challenges to why those things aren't considered confirmed?
Okay,
Because
sure.
that's where the problem lies.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So specifically with the sulfur balls and Noah's Ark, two that I'm somewhat familiar with from some videos that I researched for earlier. And again, not an expert on anything here, okay? Um, but Noah's Ark, the resting place of Noah's Ark has been challenged and refuted by a number of scientists who have studied that same place. And there's only been one time where a group of people said that that was where Noah's Ark was, that were actually there, right? So all the scientists that went there after that said, no, this there isn't a boat here. That's not what this is. So that's why it's not accepted.
I'll
Uh,
give you that some scientists have made that claim. Other scientists, along with the government of Turkey, did deem it the actual resting place of Noah's Ark. And just several miles away from the ship that they claim is not a ship, but is clearly a ship that's bowed out over time and stress, are the ruins of Noah's home, where on these ancient dragstones they've made into almost ceremonial markers. They have all the depictions of the 8 people getting off the boat. They have the animals coming off the boat. They have the boat resting on a mountain. There's even a rainbow over the boat. So I don't understand. I would disagree with you on that point, but you can move on to the Sodom and Gomorrah.
so the thing with that is again, that's why I talk about this methodology that we use. I'm completely fine with what you're saying, but whenever we go and have others assess that, we don't come out with a clear answer, and it's not because of anybody being biased. It's just that the information isn't there to support it to the level to say this thing is a fact. Now, you interpret it as supporting for your religion, and it seems that most scientists don't. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're wrong, and it doesn't mean that they're right. But we need to then say, how are we going to determine if this thing is true, other than the words of a small group of people who claimed it?
All right,
And
I'll give you Noah's Ark. You still have to deal with Sodom and Gomorrah and how the sulfur balls there burn at 98% pure, the only place on earth we find that anywhere. You also have to explain how even the Saudi government now is examining and claiming that they have the real Mount Sinai, where the top of the mountain is still scorched from where God came on top of it, and all the writings are sketched on the rocks around the mountain of the ancient Israelites.
so I will tell you what I came across in my research of that. And I'm not saying that this is the case, but as for the governments of these places, there's been claimed anyway that there was a tourism interest in them doing this. Second,
Can I tell you
the-
why that point wasn't valid, though? It's
sure.
because in Saudi Arabia, there's an ancient ruling that anywhere you've marked as your territory, you have a claim to that land. So Saudi Arabia acknowledging this as the mountain of God, Mount Sinai, with the ancient Egyptian or ancient Israelites writings all over it, that would give the Israelites claim to that land in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia would never do that.
Well, again, and I'm not familiar with what you're talking about there, or how that would work with a separate sovereign nation. But um, uh, again, I've just that those are the things that I read about it, and uh, that's where I'm at with it. I don't. I'm not saying it's the case. I'm just saying that there's the claim about that. Now, the second problem is that, again, if 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 we want to say that these things are true, then we should be able to sit down and say, if this is true, then we need to do this and this and this. We need to do these specific experiments and observations to confirm this, and put it through that rigorous process, and let it be put out for peer review so that people can check it. And once it goes through that process, I have no problem with it being true. I would accept God exists if I'm given evidence that substantiates that claim. You
I
know, so
don't I don't find that to be accurate, no disrespect, because
sure.
all the predictions that we would expect to find we have found. So we would
No.
predict that if we found Noah's Ark closely by, we would find Noah's home. We found that, it's not accepted. We find a prediction at the Sodom and Gomorrah site that if we found a location, we would find pure sulfur balls, which we have found. We
But
find with the Red Sea crossing that there would be the markers of Solomon that were installed. We found those. They have the descriptions of them very well documented. And then if we found Mount Sinai, we would expect to find scorched rock at the top, which we do.
So
All of them have predictions that were testable, and we found them accurate. You just don't accept it.
so hold on a moment here. All of these things except for one are you're talking about the discoveries of Ron Wyatt, correct?
No, these are not solely the discoveries of Ron Wyatt. The
Okay.
Caldwells also did extensive research on it, and now they're still being researched to this day. Even Saudi Arabia is reevaluating and letting
Well,
other schools from American universities come and dig, and they're finding exactly what they would expect to.
the writings on the rocks that you spoke of, they wouldn't let us test them.
Well, maybe not Americans, but the Saudi Arabia government's already tested them and found them valid. The period
Well,
time is accurate. It all goes together.
if
And
they give
we
us
haven't
their
even
research,
touched,
even,
but we haven't even touched on the city of David. Only
well,
the scripture predicted the city of David, and now we have undug the entire city of David.
all I'm asking for here, listen, I'm not saying that these things aren't the case. I'm saying that we just need to subject these to the same process that we do other scientific claims. And whatever the findings are within that, I'm willing to accept. But until we can do that, I have to approach it with a bit of skepticism because of the amount of untruths and inconsistencies and things that have been told in this area of work, right? There are a number of fraudsters out there in this area, right?
Yeah, but I find that slightly hypocritical, if I could just be honest with you, because you're telling us that you not personally, but your side says that we're ignorant if we don't accept the predictions that you've discovered, if we don't believe in the fossils that you find in certain layers. But then when we dig up the whole city of David or find the location of any of these biblical sites that we found, they're numerous now. It's just not accepted. It's not good enough. Why
No,
is it the double standard?
it's not accepted on the face of it. You're correct. Again, if it's subjected to this process, it would be accepted.
But I'm
But
saying you keep rejecting all of the predictions that we would expect to find. You don't accept any of them. That's where
okay,
your
so
hypocrisy comes in.
the sulfur balls, right? There's a completely natural explanation for that, and I'm sure you're aware of it. The the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, they the they don't the things that they said that they found, like the burns and the pillars and all that stuff, has been questioned by professionals who have went and investigated this, and they say that that's not what's there. So you have two competing sides. My position is that until you have shown this to be true, I'm not going to accept it to be true. And that's it. It's that simple. It's not a matter of
Here's the problem. I've held these things in my hand. If you're looking at the screen right now, here are the literal sulfur balls from Sodom and Gomorrah. If you look at the shelf right under that, we have the bones that were burned up from the rapid fire of Sodom and Gomorrah.
well,
They
what
have been tested. It's just never accepted.
what did the scientists say about these things? Because I know what they said, and I'm sure you do too.
Something that was scorched that bad was not testable. That was the claim that was made.
Okay.
But
So
you can
and
clearly make out all the bones.
about the sulfur balls, what was the problem with that?
I'm not sure of that.
Okay, so with the sulfur balls, the body of water that runs through there has a really high sulfur content, um, which you could say is because of these same sulfur balls, I suppose. But
Well, yeah,
but until we determine that, how do we know which one of those is true? This
because
is
you would not expect to find millions and millions of balls of sulfur. It would be just laid formation like anything else. They don't have an explanation for that. You still haven't explained the pillars of Solomon that mark the Red Sea crossing, with the chariot wheels obviously still at the bottom. I mean, come and kind of explain away some of those.
so those were in fact studied and determined to be a fraud, right?
No, they weren't. Show
Yeah,
me the research. They were never
I
determined to be
sure
a
will.
fraud. That's just not accurate.
I have a video on my channel, and I don't care to pull the actual sources for you. I just can't do it right while we're talking. But there's a video on my channel where I talk about the discoveries of Ron Wyatt, right? and about these chariot wheels and the Red Sea
Ron
crossing.
Wyatt's not the only one to validate these claims. You can toss Ron
Right.
Wyatt completely aside if you don't believe Ron Wyatt.
No.
He's not the only one to find these claims.
Right, but we're talking about the same thing. It's the same claim, though, right?
Yeah, but if you're going to use Ron Wyatt personally disqualified, then it's not fair to
I'm
use
not.
him as the representation, right?
I'm not. They actually sent people who went and looked at these things, and that's their conclusion, not mine. Now, again, if it's the case, whenever we subject these things to scientists to go look at them, and they say that's not what's here, it's this and this, then that's fine. We disagree. Further study is needed, and until a study comes out that agrees with those, I don't see any reason to suggest that that's the case. Right?
I just don't see how this can be looked at, and you tell me that these are not chariot wheels. It's unfathomable to me. They even have the correct amount of spokes for the period of Egyptian wheels we would expect to find. Like, it's so in your face.
If I recall correctly about this particular thing, there was I don't want to suggest something that's not the case here, so I'm not going to. I'm just saying that the people who have went and studied this, because they did send numerous scientists out there to look at this, and they said that's not what we're seeing there, and that these things are not anything even resembling what they should be if that's the case. So
the problem is all these scientists that you're talking about that went out there and disproved were all secular scientists. They're the ones who says, no, it has to be anything but this. We have to disqualify this evidence, even though this would be a great prediction for our side, if it was the opposite shoe on the foot.
What would be what about being a secular scientist would make them have a bias of whether that's a chariot wheel or not?
Because the majority of their funding comes from the government to hold up evolution.
Yeah. So again, we get back to this thing to where there's some conspiracy every time mainstream science disagrees with these things.
Now, it's a conspiracy that the majority of scientific funding comes from government grants? That's a conspiracy theory?
Well, the conspiracy is that you're suggesting there's some underhanded stuff going on here. That's the conspiracy part.
There's certainly underhanded things going on.
With this particular claim. So again, subject these things to the rigors of science and accept what the outcome of it is.
If we held the predictions that you have to the same standard you're holding us to, this theory of evolution wouldn't even be in the public schools. That's our point. It's a total double standard.
The theory of evolution is so here's the problem with that. The theory of evolution has been through those steps, and that's what I'm asking you to do, is submit it for the same methodology.
Except so many of your methods are just not working. Take the lunar problem. You guys have a lunar problem. We know that the moon is moving away from Earth about 1 inch to 1.5 inches a year. They say that we can judge how far back time goes because of this. It's an accurate model. But if you go back like 100 million years, you have a real problem because the moon would be so close, it would wreak havoc on the world. And they'll say, well, obviously the lunar recession rate has changed over time, but you can't prove that because you're already going off of the standard of 1 inch a year to get your billions of years. Double standard. Both things can't be right, Joe.
Okay, so about the moon. What you just said has been disproven over and over and over. Now, you have chosen not to accept that, which is okay. But the fact of the matter is that whenever you're talking about two bodies in space, the closer they are, is going to cause a difference in gravity. And the mass of the Earth and the moon having to pull water around the Earth, as we had discussed before, does cause an expected change in the recession rate, right? I mean, it's not like they just say these things.
My problem is if you just conceded that there was a change in the recession rate, they do not take that into consideration when they use the lunar cycle to tell us how old we are. That's my problem. It's a double standard. They
But
don't. How could they? They don't know what the atmosphere was like. They have no idea what the recession was. It's an assumption. An
but they
assumption
do.
is a guess.
It's math. It's not an assumption. It's
It's
math.
not math if they don't know the formula. It's a guess. They don't know the formula. They have no idea what the recession rate was, even a million years ago.
I mean, I guess we just I can refer you to an article on Talk Origins about it. That's the best I can do.
Okay, I guess. I never get that one answered. The other one I really like to ask is at which point did we evolve the soul? Now, you guys don't believe necessarily in souls, you would say sentience, but when would we evolve that? And what were the variables in the environment that caused us to evolve the soul or sentience?
No one has shown a soul to exist or any reason for one to exist.
There's something that makes us unique in the universe.
How do you know we're unique in the universe?
I know that we're unique in the universe because no chimpanzee has ever put a man on the moon. No gorilla has ever started a fundraiser for charity. We see a uniqueness in the human race that is not even close in nature.
So
nothing you show is even close.
We're unique on our planet then.
We have not observed any evidence of life on another planet. So until then, we have to assume that we are alone.
No. That's not how anything's done.
Right? Because I thought the whole point of science was the evidence. Show me the evidence.
Right. But
where's your evidence?
You don't assume a conclusion either in science.
Well, this is a prediction. I predict that if we are alone in the universe, we won't find signs anywhere in the universe for other life. And lo and behold, up until this very point, my prediction has been proven accurate. You have no evidence of life.
Have you seen where they're now doing a study on an exoplanet where they think they've found artificial lights on the surface of the planet?
Yeah, and Achilles could touch better on that. Achilles has one of the most expensive telescopes known to man. I think even NASA would be a little jealous of his telescope.
Well, he still can't see an exoplanet with it, so...
Fair enough, but he can see what's going on up there. So far, no signs of life.
He can see a limited way across our own solar system, is what he can see.
Okay, but still, what you're saying doesn't prove anything.
I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to get you to use skepticism is what I'm trying to do.
No, I hear you there. It's just I never get any of the answers. I almost always get we don't know, or that is just unprovable.
Right.
Or assumptions that there's life other places in the universe, which we just haven't proved.
Okay, let's go back then. Would you like me to pull up the Talk Origins article and go through it with you about the moon recession?
No, if you're willing to talk about it, you can give me your knowledge, but I'm not going to go over their whole deluded theory.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. You're saying that you're not given answers, and it's because... honestly, I mean, like, I'm not the authority on these things, and I don't claim to be. The only position that I hold on this is that I accept the findings of scientific claims that have been through the scientific method, and that process has been shown to be the best tool for us to explain the world around us. So I accept those things, right? I'm not saying that I've done the science or that I can give you a great explanation of the moon off the top of my head, but I know where that information exists if you're willing to go look at it.
Just got back, and can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
We hear you, Achilles. This is actually the perfect time for you to get back because we were going over the lunar recession rate and the lack of evidence for life out there. So we're in space, and this is your arena where you really shine.
Because I'm in space, but I also think it's the right time to be back because I just heard that argument, which that's my whole point in bringing it up, is that there are so many cases that this scientific method does not prove itself. It doesn't prove back to that theory, and every crack in the system, it gets thrown away. It's like thrown under the rug. And there have to be methods to disprove, let's say, what happened in your debate with Joseph, disprove the huge worldwide flood by a set of little super floods.
That I mean, you're just demonstrating your misunderstanding of how science works, because no one has any at all owes it to anyone to disprove unsupported claims.
No, I'm referring to the claim that you made that what you do is you go by the scientific theory, and I just said again that for that to be true, which I would completely respect, would be to actually follow the scientific theory. So if you have a theory that it's not getting proven, maybe you should re-examine it.
Yeah,
We didn't.
I'm fine with that.
We didn't start because we believed in a God. And I don't know, brother, if you know my history. I realized all these things that we are discussing and debating here in like 8 years ago. Before that, I was the person that was trying to convince everyone of different stuff, of the scientific theory, of space, the way I saw it back then. Let's not get into that discussion. But it's not like I started believing in a flood. For me, understanding that there was a flood was a big shock. It like completely destroyed my 30-year-old character. I couldn't believe it. So don't think or use the premise that I came to this realization because I believed in a God and I looked around and said, "Oh, that's how he did it." No, that didn't start that way. I started examining the facts and I kept seeing holes. And when it looks like a Swiss cheese, it's not a theory. And I started realizing the alternative, like what could be the alternative. And it actually has more proof.
So you applied skepticism to science, but not to religion. Is that what you're saying?
I started by applying skepticism to religion from when I was very, very young. Like that was taken for granted for me that it was fairy tales, because I had that consensus that you are referring to convincing me it was fairy tales, because now we have science. And then I looked into the science and I started realizing that
Oh.
there's a hole here, there's a hole there, and they're just jumping those gaps and making it a theory.
So you just accepted the alternative explanation blindly.
Not the alternative. I just started understanding why it's happening, because there has to be a way we got here. There aren't three options.
But see, that's completely inconsistent with what you just said.
What is?
That okay, so you said that science, there's all these holes in science, and I went and looked and everything, but there has to be a reason we're here, so I accept religion
I
now.
didn't say that. Don't
Right.
strawman it. I didn't say that. I said that you said that. So then, Achilles, you jumped out. You jumped to the other side, like without examining it, and that's not what I said. I said that I realized why that theory full of holes is trying to keep itself alive,
Yes.
because there has to be an explanation of how we got here. And if you want to take out what we believed in for 1600 years, you have to come up with some alternative. And that alternative is full of holes.
So here's the problem with that. Do you think that biblical creation is not full of holes? Because it absolutely is.
Oh, it absolutely is not.
Well, see, that's why I don't believe what you're saying is true. Because you don't apply the same methodology to both these things.
Well, wait,
One
we'd be
of them-
happy to explain it to you. Could you demonstrate some of the holes in our theology? I mean, we just named off a whole number of holes for yours.
You
Yeah,
want me to tell you the
Let's
whole
play a
thing?
fair game.
Oh, you're asking him. Okay, I get you.
No. We're asking you. Yeah, you said that there were holes in our theology also, but I haven't found any. Could you give me an example?
Well, within the, for example, although this is more paleontology, we have found very few fossils, right, compared to what to the number of to the amount of life that we believe existed. So there's lots of things to still be discovered, but that's because we're going at this from two different directions. I'm not looking for archaeology to confirm some notion I have of the way things are supposed to be. I look at what they present and follow the evidence to where it leads.
That's not a prediction. A prediction is saying that if
You
this
didn't
is
ask me for a
accurate, we would expect to find this, this, or this. And then you go out and find this, this, or this, and you say, this holds up the theory.
But you didn't ask me to make a prediction. That's not what you asked for.
No, I
Okay, but
just
you
don't
didn't.
think you accurately depicted what that would be.
You got asked to bring up a hole in the alternative theory, which is the creation theory, and you didn't answer that.
Holes in the creation theory. I can tell you all kinds, but
Give us just a couple. Yeah, take the floor. It's all yours.
we didn't all evolve. We didn't all rise from two people. We know that. It's a fact.
How? How is that a fact?
Genetics. It's not the way that
Have you ever
genetics works.
have you ever heard of the Eve gene we discovered in women?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but it that doesn't speak of us coming from two people either.
Okay.
The Eve gene talks about a population.
Well,
The
uh,
name is a misnomer.
well, they did name it Eve because it looks like we're going back. The women, at least,
Yeah,
are
it
all going back
it goes
to.
back to a particular bottleneck in human history, which is
And
still way further than 6,000 years ago.
According to inaccurate dating methods, right? Because like we've sent seals that just recently died to get dated, and they told us that they were hundreds of thousands of years old.
Right. And have you looked at why that you can't date seals that just died that way?
No, my question is, why didn't the lab pick up on that? Right? They're the experts.
Well, the lab measures the amount of whatever dating method you're using. They measure the amount of it in that particular thing. They're not saying, "Oh, well, this is definitely from a seal or whatever." They interpret the data. They're not you've got two different things going on there.
All right. What is
okay,
this, Achilles?
so you just said before you guys get into this, you just said that we know for a fact that we don't go back. Not all of us came from Adam and Eve, right?
Yeah.
And I just went to bring up the mitochondrial Eve gene,
Yeah.
which is actually saying this, and I want you to explain the difference for me. I'm trying now to find it in my tabs. Give me a second. Here it is. So it says here, in other words, she is defined as the most recent woman from whom all living humans descend in an unbroken line purely through their mothers and through the mothers of those mothers back until all lines converge on one woman.
Yeah, yes, but we also know that there was a population of humans that they can trace it back through a lineage to a particular person. They're not claiming that this is the only woman, though.
The thing is that they discovered this back in 2000, let's say 10,
Yeah.
and the theory of evolution exists for longer than that. But that part doesn't change the fact at all.
Yeah.
So how can we have different groups of different people? But what is saying here is that they've discovered this gene in all women on the earth
Yes.
that leads us back to one woman. And that's
Right.
why they gave it the name Eve.
Right. So they're saying that women share this gene, but the claim isn't that it was a population of one. That's not anywhere in the claim.
It's not specified outside the claim either, though, right?
Yes,
So
it
this does
actually
well.
it
It says
actually
that
is.
it says all living humans. So it does, and then it says goes back to one woman. So what you're saying, you have to extract out of text that's not here. I'm asking
No,
you to
no.
break down what's in this text.
Right.
All
And
living humans back to one woman.
yes, it's saying that women share a gene with some other woman in history, that they are in fact a lineage going back to this one particular person. The claim is not that this was the only woman living. That's not
Dude,
anywhere in the claim.
dude, are we
Well,
reading the same thing? Because it says here the analogy into the male genome is the mitochondrial, the chromosomal Adam, the individual from whom all living humans are partilineally descended.
paternally.
For what? Yeah, that, right? Pardon my Greek. So I looks to me like I'm reading here. It says we're going back to one man, and that's why they called it Adam.
Read the first sentence of the last paragraph there.
The name mitochondrial Eve alludes to the biblical Eve, which has led to repeated misinterpretation. Of course, that's what Wikipedia would say. I'm talking about the gene.
No,
Now,
I want to talk about the evidence, the fact that we go back to one woman and the fact that they trace us back to one man. Sounds a lot like Adam and Eve to me. But
and
again, when the
their
evidence
particular
supports the biblical claim, it has to be anything else.
It has to be a
no, they're
misrepresentation
not
or a
saying it's any
misconception, right?
they're not saying that it's anything else. What they're saying is that if you read the rest of this, it talks about lineages, which is exactly what I said. Nor does it refer to the first woman, nor living female of her time, nor the first member of a new species. And this is all
Joe,
in the
with all due
scientific
respect,
papers on this subject.
with all due respect, brother, I did not expect Wikipedia to say, "Hey guys, we found it. The Bible is actually real." I did not expect that to be here.
You brought up a source that disagrees with the claim that you're making, and now
I
you
brought
want to
up a
say that it's
source.
because of the
I brought up
source.
a source which has been proven in the past that it will always go with the evolutionary side, never the creation side. A
Wikipedia isn't.
source that is biased and has proven that is biased in the past. If you want to see proof of it, go to Kent Hovind's page and see that the only picture that they have of him is his mugshot. And that's not the case for, let's say, Trump. He has a mugshot too.
Do you know how
So,
the articles on Wikipedia are curated?
and I yeah, really, Joe, really, I expected you to come here and teach me how Wikipedia works.
Well, I mean, it goes in the face of everything you're saying. You're saying that
No, what I'm
you're,
trying to get to you, and you'll see the point. The point is that when there is something which is a discovery, they will have to include it. But then they will give you the evolutionary understanding of it. My point is why such a gene exists,
they,
and
they,
they are forced to admit here that we're going back to one woman and to one man. And then, oh, they're going to have to excuse it and talk about all the Australopithecus. Of course they would.
Hey, gentlemen,
so you're
I
you're projecting badly. Um, you just did exactly the thing you're accusing unfoundedly, may I add, Wikipedia of doing. You're saying, well, it says one woman here, never mind what the rest of the article says, and then you're saying, well,
I'm not
no,
saying
the
never
article
mind what
doesn't
it
agree
says.
because they have to say this, and you're saying that science or Wikipedia or whoever is the one doing this when you're doing it. You're doing that, and you haven't shown anyone else to be doing it but you.
honestly, we just read word for word off the article. But
Yes, and
gentlemen,
so did I, but
but
that part wasn't accepted. Just the
sh-
first
sh-
paragraph.
Sure. But we're going on 2 hours and 39 minutes. You guys are welcome to continue the conversation, Achilles, if you want, but I have to excuse myself.
Yeah, I do too, man. Because
Okay.
it's 4 a.m.
All right. Well, thank you for showing up today. It was very unexpected, but you've been a gentleman, and we appreciate that. And out of respect, we'll come by your channel sometime when you're doing the open discussions.
Sure. Thanks, guys.
Thanks
Hey,
for
have a
dropping
good
by,
night,
brother.
man.
All right. Bye.